The debate about what order to watch the Star Wars films has been going on since the prequel trilogy, and now with the release of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, it's gotten a little more, I guess, up for debate. Because with Rogue One, and for those who haven't seen it, very light spoilers here, Rogue One does take place literally right before A New Hope, the very first Star Wars movie. And you could actually watch Rogue One and A New Hope back to back in like a big, 3.5 hour chunk of one big movie, and it would actually fit. But what about the rest of the films? What about the TV series? What about, new fans, old fans? So on this video, I want to kind of provide what I think will be a guide for those of you out there who want to introduce like your children or your spouses or your girlfriends to Star Wars. I think we can give our opinions on what order to watch the movies in, because there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I want to go in and kind of explain and kind of give our thoughts. So explained is the key word. So joining me, I can't find a better name as far as explaining goes. Please welcome to Star Wars Discussion, Alex from Star Wars Explained. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm so happy to talk to you, bro, finally.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. Well, we're talking our favorite topic, and that's Star Wars. Galaxy Far, Far Away. So, Alex, man, when these movies first came out, 4, 5, and 6, we were either not born. I wasn't born.
I wasn't either.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay. So, but we grew up with them, and then when the prequels came out, we were definitely alive. And back then, it was so much easier. It was 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And we had kind of, I guess back then we weren't really sure what we were going to do when they were all out, if we should watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because the main issue is that when you watch the original Star Wars trilogy, A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi, you've got one giant story. Obviously there's retcons, but you've got a story that is a perfect self-contained story. You've got twists and turns. You find out that Vader is Luke's father. You find out that Leia is Luke's sister. You find out all these twists and turns. Obi-Wan lied, all that stuff. And if you watch the prequels, if you go into the prequels like we all did back in 1999 when Phantom Menace came out, we knew where this was going. We knew when we saw Obi-Wan Kenobi meet Anakin Skywalker in that trailer, we knew at some point they were going to fight by a volcano, because that had been talked about for years. We knew that, Obi-Wan would end up getting killed in the Death Star. We knew all this stuff, and we knew at that point that at some point that little boy would grow up and have kids, and that would be the main characters for Star Wars. But if you watch it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Alex, you don't know that. But it's also like, does it ruin the twist at the end of Empire? Because obviously, you and I were not alive in 1980 when that movie came out. We didn't have that jaw-dropping, moment when Vader reveals himself to be Luke's father. Do you think that watching it in order ruins it? Or do you think that No, I Am Your Father is so iconic that everybody knows what it is, even if you've never even seen Star Wars?
Yeah, I am of the opinion that you should watch it 4, 5, 6. Like, we talked about this before, that we both agree that kind of release order is the way to go. I tend to think that in all media, not just Star Wars, but I would argue that the twist of Vader being Luke's father, that was the original intent of the creators, was to make jaws drop. So if you are watching them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, it kind of messes with the goal of the creator to throw those curveballs your way, and you get the whole story, I guess, chronologically, but to me it just diminishes the actual story being told and the way it was meant to be told.
Yeah, because it's retcon after retcon, then another retcon in the prequels. It's interesting, Alex, because I remember when the prequels were first coming out, the internet was not what it is today, but I remember being on the web, and one of the big discussion points was that people thought, and this would have been cool, people thought that what they were going to do is they were going to have, and this is before Attack of the Clones came out, they were going to have Anakin die, or quote die, right, quotation marks, and then have Vader appear and never really reveal that they were the same person, therefore saving the episode 5 twist. Like, they were gonna make the viewer think that they were two different guys, because they were gonna cut away and then later on show Vader. I think that might have been a better way to preserve the Empire twist, but it's one of those things where I also feel like people who grew up with the OT, they go to see Revenge of the Sith and they want to see Anakin turn into Darth Vader. So it's like, as a writer, Lucas was kind of handcuffed. He couldn't do either one without ruining something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think who did it? Belated Media, great YouTube channel, has like the kind of his own version of the prequels, and that's something he touches on, is like, is it possible to have it so that the mystery is preserved? And I think that would have been challenging. I think maybe what would have been a little better is if Anakin weren't the central focus of the original, of the prequels. I mean,
make it about Obi-Wan.
Yeah, partly, or maybe even just brand new characters with Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of on the periphery, where it's not all about his turn. And yeah, maybe we could just hear that Anakin Skywalker's been killed, but now there's this guy Darth Vader. Or they could even have the rumor Darth Vader killed Anakin and now he's after us. Like,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to take shots at something that someone else worked on. Like, I have no experience writing films or making films, but it's a lot easier to do what we're doing now. But I guess that's just it was painting himself into a corner to a degree that, like, yeah, if you're going to make it all about Anakin, you have to show these things because, I mean, they were some of the most emotional parts of the prequel trilogy, is like seeing Darth Vader again and hearing the breath, and it would have been a different film if they didn't include all that stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing that's interesting is if you really do your research on the history of Star Wars, the original idea, okay, Lucas was already bouncing around ideas for sequels as he was shooting the first Star Wars, but he didn't know he was going to do it or not. And one of the things, of course, that's been talked about by a lot of historians is the fact that the original idea for the Star Wars story was it was going to be, the adventures of Luke Starkiller. And it was going to be about Luke. And now, if you ask George Lucas insists that we all watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because now the story is no longer about Luke. Now the story is the tragedy of Darth Vader. That's the whole story, that we're supposed to watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as if it is the life story of Darth Vader. It's not really about Luke anymore. And I find it fascinating, Alex, man, that's changed, like, literally the narrative has changed as the years have gone by. There's a very good book called The Secret History of Star Wars that covers this tremendously. Now, I want to talk to you about Episode 7 and Rogue One, okay? Star Wars Renaissance, it's back. We both agree. 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. How do you handle 7? Do you go 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, or would you recommend still doing it release order 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, then 7? And do you think, because what I did, Alex, man, is I already know these movies by heart, but with my friends and people who I went to go see the movie with, we rewatched the original trilogy to prepare for 7. Do you think that's a good idea at that point?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I watched the original trilogy and then watched 7, but if you're introducing someone, like, all of these different orders are totally valid. If you're a diehard fan and you're just like, hey, what would it be like to watch it this way? Like, that's totally fine. But I think if it's your first time viewing something, I think you should see it all in viewing order, in release order. So I would go 4, 5, 6, and I would go back to 1, 2, 3, because if you go straight to 7, like, you might not. You're going to be more disconnected from the stuff that's in the prequels. Yeah. And also, I think it's important to build the anticipation for 7. Like, we had to wait, I don't even remember how long anymore.
10 years. 05 was the last one. Yeah, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you're right. So we had to wait 10 years to get another story, just Star Wars movie, period. And it was, 30 years since Return of the Jedi, so there's this huge anticipation between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens that I think it's important to at least build it a little bit by taking a break and watching the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you. For new people, it should be 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, then 7, then Rogue One. But if you're gonna watch it a second time, I think OT 4, 5, 6, then 7, because 7 is so like close to 6, even though it really isn't, because a lot of stuff happened in between 6 and 7 that we still don't even have all the answers to. Now, Rogue One, that's the one I want to talk to you about. I agree with you that Rogue One should be watched last, but I could totally see like if you've already seen the movies once, for new fans, I could totally see like Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 1, 2, 3, Rogue One, 4, 5, 6, 7. But Rogue One is more connected to 4 than it is to 3.
Absolutely.
Now, how would you factor in the television shows? Because I don't know if the TV shows like Clone Wars and Rebels are necessary. I would suggest for those of you who are trying to get your friends and fiance and spouses and girlfriends into Star Wars, or boyfriends, whatever, I would recommend if they really like Star Wars, that should be supplemental material. But my question to you is, do you think they should watch Clone Wars in between 2 and 3 for the first time? Like if you're showing it to like a kid, let's say, should you go 1, 2, Clone Wars, then 3? Is that necessary?
No, I don't think it's necessary, but
because I mean they did a lot of good. Clone Wars did a lot for the characters, man. I think.
I totally agree. I think that watching Clone Wars would make someone more sympathetic for Anakin. And yeah, I mean, I've never done that, and I never had that option, so I don't really know. But I could see that being maybe the strongest argument for just throwing something in between a movie.
Yeah, like you think maybe if for somebody, for like a kid, you could do 1, 2. Clone Wars 3, and then Rebels, and then that's it. Then we go to Rogue One. I mean, that for the prequel era stuff, right? That makes sense. That could work.
I could see that.
Now, last question. What do you feel about the Machete Order? Now, the Machete Order, for those who don't know, I believe it skips Phantom Menace altogether. You're supposed to watch that. And it's supposed to be 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. I'm not a fan of this at all because I think it's too convoluted. I think you're only doing it to preserve just the ending / twist. I don't like this at all. How do you feel?
If it's something that you just want to try out for fun and see what it's like, then yeah, sure. But if it's if you're showing someone Star Wars for the first time, I think it's totally going to throw off the flow going from Empire to Return of the Jedi, and having to like take this break to visit almost totally unfamiliar characters for 3 movies or even 2, and then to go back to Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I think it's too convoluted.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's too, like, people are trying to, like, preserve the Empire twist, and I think...
Mm-hmm. And that's important, I think, but...
But you can preserve it by going 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, exactly. I don't know. Okay.
I like the intent behind it. I'll say that, but I think the better way is 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I do too. And as we get more of these Han Solo, like, we got the Han Solo movie, that is going to be a prequel, obviously, because Han Solo died in Force Awakens. I do think that it should be watched again in release order, because they're going to be putting movies in different parts of the timeline anyways. I mean, for all we know, we may get a movie, and we may get a Splinter of the Mind's Eye like remake or something animated. Who knows what we're going to get out of Disney? So I think it should be maybe not exactly like Splinter of the Mind's Eye, because that contradicts Empire, but you know what I mean, something like in between 4 and 5. We might even get that one day. Who knows, really?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the way Legends worked was authors would take stories and they would be randomly placed throughout the timeline, and that's like, I read books in release order back in the day, because new books that would take place, like, say, a year after Return of the Jedi would still have some connection, or they would have characters that were introduced in books like Heir to the Empire that took place 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Like, I remember Borsk Phalia, the Bothan New Republic politician. He's introduced in Heir to the Empire, but then he's also in the X-Wing books, which take place like 3 years before that. So it's kind of like, to get all of the connections, you should read them in release order so that you understand completely what's going on and they don't introduce or bring back someone that's already been introduced.
Yeah, and even that's confusing now, because now we have essentially the canon and the legends. And I mean, I love a lot of legend stuff, and I love a lot of the canon stuff. For new fans, I can imagine it being overwhelming, but I'm sure that we will at some point either, I'm sure that the entire Star Wars community will probably get together and maybe create like a guide. There's already a few out there of what to watch or what to read because there's so much of it out there. It's Star Wars is huge, so everybody check out Star Wars Explained. I'm gonna leave a link to his channel in the description. You probably already know who he is. Huge channel, very successful, and one of the nicest people like ever, bro. Like you're like the nicest dude. Yeah, like
thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. All right, thank you guys. Also, let us know in the comments, in the comment section. Let us know what order do you prefer to watch Star Wars in. Do you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Do you go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3? Talk to you later.